This offseason, Aaron Rodgers skillfully negotiated a huge new contract, which included a fully guaranteed $59 million. It also fully guaranteed that receiver Davante Adams would never see another down as a Packer. Rodgers celebrated by getting a not at all pretentious tattoo of whatever this is. Don't try and figure it out. Rodgers said you wouldn't get it if you weren't a student of astrology. Which, I guess, he is? Just him, the Zodiac killer, and that lady down the street who refuses to read my palm just because it's covered in a substance, and also not my hand. Hello everybody, welcome to Shut Up Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus, that's Kevin. In this episode, we can't shut up about the Packers. This is going to be my highest rated episode ever, because the Packers have a huge, loyal fan base, and also, I don't know how YouTube works. Is it a series of pneumatic tubes, or... No? This is the 2022 Green Bay Packers. We're talking about some questionable love, a receiver left for dead, and enough rookies to choke a horse.
And now it's time for a breakdown.
Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback who's ever lived or will ever live. At least, that's what he told me. This is Aaron Rodgers' 18th year in the league. It can vote, go off to war, and date Leonardo DiCaprio. This offseason, Rodgers signed a contract for a 3-year deal with an additional 2 option years. He's still got 2 years left on his previous deal, meaning this contract doesn't start until 2024. So it's a 5-year deal that starts in 2 years, and it might only be for 3 or 2 years.
That doesn't make sense.
Last year, Aaron Rodgers was a fantasy top 5 at the position. Not a surprise, he's been a top 10 most of his career. And though he's at the age you keep binoculars close for cliff spotting, he's seen a boost since LaFleur joined the pack. But this offseason, Davante Adams was traded because he's always wanted to play for the Raiders. That's what he's going with? Adams is one of the best in the league. This is a major blow to Aaron Rodgers' production. Or is it? Since 2015, Rodgers' record without Adams was 10-1. He averaged over 250 yards a game, 2.2 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 112.7. In his best game, sans Adams, he threw for 429 yards and 5 touchdowns. History tells us Rodgers is gonna be just fine. And if you're wondering who his top receiver was in that game, it was Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who they didn't give a shit about keeping this year either. Rodgers doesn't need receivers, stop paying them. They're overrated. You see those motorized tackling dummies? Strap a fan to them. You has hands? Congratulations. Get the duct tape. Steve's running crossing routes. Oh, you don't think we'll find fans willing to sign a waiver? This is Green Bay. Financially, they're already invested in the team. Might as well invest their vital meats too. Catching passes from Aaron Rodgers is a dream come true, even at the cost of getting their endocrine systems turned inside out. It's next man up, and women and children too. Every week, a new crop of fans eager to fist bump Rodgers and bleed cheese in the end zone. Then toss their mangled corpses into the stands and let them crowd surf to an unmarked grave in the parking lot. But parking's still $40. Don't think you're getting out of that shit. And whatever happened to Jordan Love? 2 years ago, the Packers moved up to take him. That resulted in some underwear origami by Aaron Rodgers, who focused his rage into an MVP campaign and a huge new contract extension. I'm sure you could have traded back and gotten the same result with Jalen Hurts. Love was the very questionable number 4 quarterback in the 2020 draft. We've only seen him in the preseason and one career start, Week 9 versus the Chiefs. Love got the start after Rodgers somehow contracted COVID-19. Love went 19 of 34 for 190 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Itty-bitty sample size committee. If anything, the positive camp reports are finally trickling in. Coach LaFleur has been praising Jordan Love's growth. Maybe it's the hallucination tea, but it seems even Aaron Rodgers has been giving love. Praising his footwork and fundamentals. I mean, that's hardly gushing, but for Rodgers, that's like sharing a beer with your vegan son. There's a swell of positivity growing around Jordan Love this year, but as neat as that is, Love will continue to remain locked in layaway for the foreseeable future. Danny Etling is the backup's backup. That's right, Super Bowl winner Danny Etling. Didn't know that shit, did ya? He's been on like 7 different teams plus the Canadian League. This is his second stint with the Packers. You hold on to that dream, Danny. You hold on like grim goddamn death. Aaron Rodgers in all formats because, doy. I don't see a cliff, and if there is one, I'd rather see it in my rear view than dive out of this car early, only to watch it drive safely to a top 5 performance. Jordan Love remains a lottery ticket. I wouldn't stash him anywhere. He's a spot start at best until Rodgers hangs him up. Until then, he's just a roster clogger. Love is 23 now. By the time Rodgers walks away, he could be 25 or older. Whoever holds Love is burning a roster spot. It means one less wide receiver, running back, tight end. I don't want to be the one incurring that cost. I want my league mates to do that, so I could benefit from the extra player who could actually see the field. There's a time to stash and a time to pay. Making your league mates do the stashing is a strategy. If and when Love becomes a viable starter, that's when I trade for him. Thanks for clogging your roster for me. Here's an honest trade in return. And if I don't get him, so what? Who cares? Love is likely in his mid-20s by then, and I'll go draft some fresh doe-eyed 21-year-old rookie with soft skin that smells like hope. I've been told that videos where you see the person's hands do way better on YouTube, so please, subscribe to this channel. Like the video, click the bell. It helps other people find the show. Gotta say, this feels good. Real natural. All right. Aaron Jones is just as likely to lead the league in rushing as anyone. And even if he doesn't, he's still likely a top 10 back due to his passing upside. Jones averaged 65 targets over the last 3 years. That's 8th most in the league. Some think that number could increase this year due to the absence of Davante Adams. Something about vacated targets, blah, 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 blah. For evidence, let's look at last year. Week 8 versus the Cardinals. Jones had 11 targets. Is that a lot? Well, Jones averaged 4.3 targets per game in all of the 2021 season, so yeah, that's a lot more. But that's just one game. Go back farther, Jones averaged just under 6 targets in his career in games played without Adams, which makes that one game stand out as rather fluky. I admit that 6 is more than 4.3. The numbers check out. But we're still just talking about 2 more targets per game. If there's any reason to question Aaron Jones' ceiling this year, it's this. It's been 5 years since any 27-year-old running back has finished inside the top 6 for fantasy. Here's a list of backs fitting that criteria this year. Last year, there was a shift in snap share between the first and second half of the season. Jones had the dominant share to start, and over the back half, A.J. Dillon saw just over 51%. There could be a lot of reasons for this. No reason to expect that trend to continue this year, except for one thing: that trend is continuing this year. Those keeping track of preseason have reported they are splitting reps evenly. A.J. Dillon is a huge beast of a man taken in the second round back in 2020. That investment and his growing snap count prove he's gonna be on the field this year. Last year, he finished just inside the top 25 for points at the position. As the snap count changed in 2021, Dillon went from beast on the bench to startable fantasy asset. In fact, from week 10 on, Dillon was the back to own in 4 of the 6 weeks when they both played. If you've been waiting for A.J. Dillon to arrive, he's here. But don't get too carried away. Jones isn't going anywhere. He was just signed to a 4-year contract in February. Both Jones and Dillon are going to be starters in your lineup this year. Kylan Hill was a 7th-round pick in last year's draft out of Mississippi State. He's a solid backup, one that flashed in last year's preseason. But then he suffered an ACL tear in week 8. He's on the PUP list now, and no word how soon he'll return. A pity, because I'd really like to see more of him. Patrick Taylor was an undrafted free agent in 2020 out of Memphis. He's a big, strong, serviceable runner. He's a career backup with very little flash. Tyler Goodson is an undrafted free agent out of Iowa. He's 5'9", 197 pounds, and runs a 4.4. He has good burst and agility. With Hill injured and Patrick dinged up, Goodson has a good chance at snagging the number 3 spot here. His ability to change direction and make defenders miss is impressive. If you're looking for a comp, Player Profiler has C.J. Spiller listed, but he reminds me of Tyler Beatty, who, if you're not familiar with the Ravens' 6th-round pick, comps to Giovanni Bernard. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in all formats. Flip a coin per game on who's going to have more fantasy points, but they're both starters as far as I'm concerned. You should be so lucky to get one of them on your team. Dillon's ADP is lower. In fact, it's too low. Snag him if you can. I wouldn't even be concerned with having both on your team. Nobody else on this team is worth stashing. I like Hill and Goodson. They're both worth remembering, but that's about it. There's just too much beef at the front of this line, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. If Jones or Dillon suffered an injury, it'd just be more work for the other. They're not splitting 50-50 reps with a third string back. Oh, they'll get reps, but it'll only be the scraps that fall off the people table. Allen Lazard is the de facto wide receiver 1 on the team now that Davante Adams is gone. Lazard was a restricted free agent. He only signed his tender in June. 1 year, $4 million. A pretty good bargain for the team. With a small sample size, Lazard definitely played up in games sans Adams. He's earned the respect and trust of the coaches and Aaron Rodgers. I think he's easily a top 20 receiver in fantasy this year. Probably a top 15. Lazard is 6'3", 225 pounds and runs a 4.5. He's been out-maneuvering and out-muscling the Packers' corners in camp and making plays. I honestly never saw Lazard as a number 1 coming, but here we are. And I'm drinking the Kool-Aid straight out of his wall-crashing head. Oh yeah! Sammy Watkins has come to Green Bay. The supposed replacement for MVS got a cheap 1-year deal too. People are jazzed to the tits for the 29-year-old former first-round pick, convinced that he's about to go off with Rodgers tossing him the ball. Which is kind of funny, because he just spent the last 3 years catching passes from Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and only averaged 500 yards and 2 touchdowns per season. Sammy's been injured a lot. Last year he suffered a thigh strain, hamstring strain, and an undisclosed injury. What do you think that was? Auto brewery syndrome? Water allergy? Cotard's delusion? Luposlipophobia? Sammy's already been on the injury list in camp, but he's back now, making a good first impression. Randall Cobb will be 32 this year. It's hard to know just how much he has left in the tank, but I'd say some. I don't expect many flash plays from Cobb this year, but I think he'll be a trusted safety valve for Rodgers, especially early in the year. There is literally nothing being said about Cobb this year. Maybe that makes him a great late buy in drafts. Christian Watson is the new hotness. Or he was when they drafted him at the top of the second this year out of North Dakota State. He's 6'4", 208 pounds and runs a 4.36. So big, so fast, so little production in college. He never had 1,000 yards or double-digit touchdowns. When it comes to upside, he's a monkey-navigated rocket ship to the moon. Unfortunately, the launch has been delayed. Watson hasn't done much this preseason. He had knee surgery in June, and he's still rehabbing. There's no timetable for his return, and they don't seem to be in a hurry to do so. Rub-a-dub-dub, it's Romeo Doubs, a 4th-round draft pick out of Nevada. He's 6'2", 204 pounds and runs a 4.5. He had 2 1,000-yard seasons in college. He's been showing out in camp. Rodgers said he's making wow plays every day. He's been beating corners like they owe him money, and if you've been anywhere near fantasy Twitter, you know the hype is near critical mass on this dude. Amari Rodgers seems to be the forgotten man. He was a 3rd-round pick just last year. He's 5'9". He's a decent athlete. I liked his tape. His final year at Clemson, he had 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. He reminded me a lot of Randall Cobb. It seemed Amari Rodgers was set to take the slot receiver role for the Packers until they brought back Randall Cobb. Rodgers' rookie year was a whole lot of nothing. He only saw 103 snaps. They've added a lot since drafting him. All the hype is on the new shiny rookies. But in theory, Rodgers could still inherit the slot role from Cobb at some point. Word is, he's lost 10 pounds this year and looks faster. The backups are Juwan Winfrey, Malik Taylor, Samori Torrey, Danny Davis, and Ishmael Hyman. I like the 7th-rounder Samori Torrey out of Nebraska. The Packers have done a really good job adding to the receiving room this year. Allen Lazard in redraft. I'm buying the narrative. I wouldn't invest in him in Dynasty. He's 26 years old. He's playing on a 1-year deal. There are a lot of shaky variables in Green Bay. I don't see a compelling argument to chase the hype outside of this year. That's a hard pass on Sammy Watkins in everything but best ball. I know he'll have a few good games, but history has shown me nothing to believe in anything beyond that point. I'll take Randall Cobb in redraft. At this point, Amari Rodgers is just a stash in Dynasty, one that, short of a Cobb injury, isn't likely to pay off until next season. Christian Watson in Dynasty. With little college production, Watson's appeal was his freakish athleticism. Coming off of surgery and missing reps with Rodgers, I think it will take him that much longer to be a contributor. I'm in on his career, but fine to miss his rookie season. I'm in on Romeo Doubs for redraft and Dynasty. First and foremost, he is a good player. You saw it with Nevada, you're seeing it in Green Bay. With Christian Watson delayed, there's room for Doubs to get action early. He's already building a rapport with Rodgers. Lazard and Watkins are on 1-year deals. Cobb isn't far from retirement. There's a path for Doubs to be a good contributor this year and maybe become the 1 or 2 next year. Robert Tonyan burst onto the scene in 2020 with 52 receptions and 11 touchdowns. He Jackson Pollocked all over your opponents and was a bona fide top 5 stud at the position. The best part was he was practically free. If you snagged him, you were some kind of fantasy sniper, thriftier than Macklemore and Ryan Lewis at Gam Gam's estate sale. Alas, 2021 was a real bitch. His stats face-planted hard, and then in week 8, the boo-boo monster karate popped his ACL. Done for the year. But he's back now, I guess, or he will be soon. He's been seen scurrying about at camp, but no official word yet about week 1. So what's it gonna be this year? Breakout stud? Fantasy fool's gold? Or will it be like a game of goddamn whack-a-mole? Tonyan's a decent player with good size and speed. He's great around the goal line, but I like the receivers around him. I could see Cobb eating into some of his intermediate area production. If that's the reality, Tonyan's fantasy value is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride this season, anytime he doesn't play kissy face with the end zone. Mercedes Lewis is next in line for tight end duty. Duty. He's 38 years old, and I just found out that's how you spell his name. I always thought it was Mercedes, like the car. You think he ever goes by Marcy? Mercedes is going into his 17th season. This ties in with Tony Gonzalez and Jason Witten for the most seasons ever played by a tight end. Lewis has made one thing clear. He wants the record. If there's one thing I can get behind, it's arbitrary goals. Hats off to you, sir. Pants too. Josiah DeGara was a 3rd-round pick in 2020. He's 6'2", mad small for the position. He saw a couple of targets last year, but nothing worth writing home about. He's a better blocker, so maybe more like a fullback. That's some hefty draft capital on a blocking tight end. Tyler Davis was a 6th-round pick back in 2020 by the Jaguars out of Georgia Tech. He's 6'4" and a decent athlete. He's made a couple of good catches in camp. If you're looking for someone to fill in for Tonyan in the pass game, Davis has the upside. Last year, the Packers were in the bottom third of teams to target the tight end position. Nobody here is my first or second choice. Even if Tonyan avoids the pup, I think it's going to be more like a roller coaster and less like top 5 this year. He's 28 years old and on a 1-year deal. Put Tyler Davis on the watch list. Either through free agency or the draft, next year, this room is ripe for disruption. The Packers didn't have anyone inside the top 20 on the D-line last year. Perhaps that's why they drafted Davante Wyatt out of Georgia in the 1st round. He's 6'3", 300 pounds, a mountain with feet and speed. Some have compared him to Warren Sapp, who, if you're too young to remember, was one bad motherfucker. Wyatt is a player for your watch list. Linebacker Devontae Campbell was a top 5 at the position last year. 102 tackles, 5 passes defensed, and he never missed a game, not even the bye week. He was found sleeping comfortably in the concourse. In week 7, he drank Washington's tears for 11 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and then he rocked those sweet little babies to sleep 6 feet deep with pillows of concrete. Campbell's set up again for success this year. Get him if you can! Linebacker Quay Walker was drafted in the 1st round out of Georgia. He's a solid tackler, built for the middle of the field. He's got a stupid good RAS. He's a hella good compliment to Devondre Campbell on the inside. He'll have a good chance at Defensive Rookie of the Year, so maybe get him on your team. Last year, cornerback Rasul Douglas was eating out of garbage cans and playing with crayons, or whatever it is practice squad players do. The Packers plucked him from the Cardinals ahead of week 6 due to injuries. Then he went all Terminator. He ended the year number 1 at the position. In fact, he was first in fantasy points for both corners and safeties. Now he's a friggin' folk hero. Rodgers even compared him to Charles Woodson. And I assume he got a key to the city, or at least gifted a charcuterie board with fresh meats and cheeses. That kind of production is almost always doomed to regression. Plus, Douglas was only meant to be a Band-Aid. Both corners are back healthy now, meaning Douglas will be shifting to the nickel corner. So don't follow his production from last year. I just wanted to bring it up because it's a pretty neat story. I was really surprised when I looked at this team. I thought the Davante Adams loss was going to be huge. But honestly, not such a big deal. They're the favorite to win the NFC North. They had a tremendous draft on both sides of the ball. They're deep at so many positions, and there's a lot to love for fantasy managers here. Should be a pretty fun year for the Packers. Thanks for watching Shut Up Football. We'll catch you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. sound right, boy.
I don't like things, is the problem. How do I get excited about them? I don't know why anyone would want to choke a horse, is the thing. They seem nice. Since 2015, Rodgers, 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 Rodgers,